Hey, I'm TV and Movie Guy on Instagram, and I'll be reviewing all of the MCU leading up to the new movie Deadpool and Wolverine in July. I hope I'll be able to make all the reviews before then, but we'll see. I'll be watching the MCU in release order so that anyone that hasn't watched before can watch along with me and won't be spoiled by anything later on. I won't be talking about movies or shows until I get to them. I'll only discuss any of the shows or movies up to that point. I'll be reviewing them assuming that you're either familiar with that movie or had just watched it. I won't be going scene by scene, basically retelling the show or movie. At that point, just go and watch it. I have not read any of the comics, and the only knowledge I have is based on what's on the screen. So today I'll be reviewing Thor, and if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch it, and then come back and watch this. And with that, allons-y. Okay, the overall review for Thor is it's an interesting character and a great new setting that expands the knowledge and scope of the viewers for Marvel. And to explain the movie as if you were five, Thor is to become king. It's interrupted by the frost giants trying to steal their source of power back. Thor takes the fight to them with his team nearly starting a war. Odin banishes him, and he is no longer able to wield his hammer. Jane Foster is a curious scientist with her team who then takes care of Thor in the meantime. Loki bypasses Thor for king, with Odin being sick, and lets frost giants into Asgard to then just double cross them and kill them to make his claim to be king stronger amongst the people of Asgard. Loki knows Thor needs to be dead for this to be certain, though, and sends the destroyer to kill his brother, which it does, but then makes Thor worthy to wield the hammer, which revives him and brings him back to life. Thor then goes back to Asgard to stop Loki, and they fight it out. So that's basically what happens in this movie. So switching things up, kind of doing it in a new order, just to give it a different flow, maybe work a little bit better. We'll see. So I'm going to start off with the tier. I've got 5 tiers. You can call them 5 stars. I don't care. The top tier being great, second tier good, third okay, fourth I didn't like, and last being bad. For Thor, I say it's okay. Just okay. And I'll get into the reasons why, but, you know, okay being 3 stars, I mean, it's not bad, but, just okay. Uh, yeah, so to go into this movie a bit more, I'm going to just do everything else first and then kind of do the breakdown of all the segments later. Just kind of get me more talking on the front end about the movie rather than after all the little things or the lines, scenes, jokes, and stuff like that. So with this movie, it was kind of cool seeing a new planet with Asgard and then also Jotunheim, but it was also kind of nice to be grounded on Earth, so it might be like half and half in terms of how much of it was on Earth versus Asgard or Jotunheim. And then we got to see like magic or science, what they called it, just depending on your point of view, really. And yeah, that's what I meant by my overall review, just kind of expanding our knowledge and what's possible in the Marvel universe. It was a pretty simple story. A lot of things happened, but there were also a lot of characters, and it didn't drill into any one of those characters, but it had to just incorporate all of them, it seemed, and the story just kind of fell a bit flat, I thought. And then Loki being the bad in this one, so he's not a bad villain, but it was just going back and forth and hard to tell what he really wanted, which isn't bad, but the audience might be wondering like what his overall motivation is. And then at the end, it didn't seem like he really hated Thor or Odin, and he just went away. He was a confusing villain, but in terms of what he was able to do, I mean, he was good. He was conniving, he was mischievous, and almost got what he wanted. But yeah, just in terms of what he actually wanted, it didn't seem like his convictions were there. And as for his powers, they were pretty cool. Um, just the witch and magic powers that he had was very useful, and I mean, he survived, so can't say that for all the bads up to this point, but yeah. And then Shield in this movie, So up to this point, I was kind of thinking, or you would think, they seem like a good organization, but then they're stealing Jane's research and just kind of a hindrance in this movie, a conflict point, and it kind of makes their organization seem almost fluid about whether or not they're good or bad, but they just really do what needs to be done without trying to preserve their image. So what they do, they're not going to be they want to be the ones that solve the problem. So that can be either seen as good or bad. So from Jane's perspective in this one, it was obviously bad, but we've seen it as good in the other movies. So, and the way they, like in that Marvel one shot, the consultant, they were able to manipulate things to what they wanted. So an organization that manipulates things to what they want, yeah, it's up to interpretation from the outsider's perspective of whether or not that's good or bad. Just depends on your from a certain point of view. A certain point of view? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. What is that from? Oh no. Hate it when that happens. If you remember what that's from, please comment below. I'll figure it out, but just go ahead and rag on me, please. Oh man, I can't believe I can't think of it. Anyway, and I've heard people wonder about the relationship aspect in this movie and whether it's forced, and it kind of seems that way, and whether or not they would each fall in love with each other that soon. And I mean, within a day or two, yeah, it is a bit fast and seems a bit forced. But after this rewatch, I thought it seemed it worked for me, just because on this rewatch, like, people can understand why Jane would fall in love with Thor that quick, just because, I mean, look at him. But no, she also would like him just because he's providing the answers she's like digging for. She is that scientist first, and to have this knowledge, all this new knowledge, be answered for her is an easy way to fall for Thor. And then they just really don't understand how Thor could fall for this woman in a day or two, because he encounters beautiful women all the time, it seems, in the various adventures he goes on, and all the women on Asgard. But after this one, after watching it this time, I can understand it, just because he was going through a change in his life, and just having someone there during that change and kind of help you through that low point to help you get through it. I can see someone like that makes Jane different from the various women Thor could have. So like, it does provide a little different element as to why he would want this beautiful woman versus others. But yeah, so like, that could be why Thor would go for Jane. But yeah. And then another big critique on this movie is all the Dutch angles. And that's just where the camera's kind of like slanted, crooked, and it's just used a lot in this movie. And I mean, I don't care too much, but it just happened a lot. It was noticeable. So I didn't care, but it's just something to comment on. And then S.H.I.E.L.D. also has Hawkeye. So Hawkeye appeared in this one, and he was the one with the bow and arrow up in the nest. Crane's nest? I don't know what you call it. It was a little different from a crane's nest, just because it was suspended, not so much fixed on a certain crane. But yeah, it was. He got a couple lines, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see his character like fleshed out a bit more. And then yeah, so I always talk about how the cast of characters they get, and in this one they got Stellan Skarsgård, Natalie Portman, and Anthony Hopkins, all of which just amazing. And their casting is on fire. How do they get these people? Like, I mean, now it's starting to build out a bit more, so you can kind of get some names, but like, this is still early on. This is only the 4th movie, so to get these names, I think, is amazing. And then they're also making names, so like Idris Elba wasn't much of a name at that time, and then Chris Hemsworth's obviously gone to do on more and better things. and maybe not better. I don't know. Thor is the main character I know him as, so maybe this is the best role, but I don't know. And then I love Darcy Lewis in this, Kat Dennings. I love her character. She's that perfect, just comic relief, I think, in this one. With the does he need CPR? I know CPR. Just after one look at him, and then she's worried about the iPod that Shield stole, and how she just got put 30 songs on it, and how that was a big deal. It's funny looking back on that. Just 30 songs is nothing now, with all the new technology we have. But yeah, like, she was a great character, I thought, and her calling Mjolnir Mew Mew, cute. It's very fun. And then I also mentioned we'd be talking about the Marvel one-shot, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer. And so in that, Coulson is basically just showing off his training in combat, and he's able to stop a gas station robbery on his way to New Mexico to the hammer. And just continuing to show just he is an awesome agent, just a great character. And I'd be just like him, unable to decide between a couple of snacks and just buy both. Those donuts, yeah. I prefer the chocolate over the powder, but, maybe I wouldn't have had, maybe I'd just get 2 chocolate in that case, but whatever. All right, and I actually have a couple new segments this time, so, and I'll kind of go over that segment for all the past movies too, but this segment's called, Who's That Little Dude? Because behind every so-called hero is a little off dude that don't get no credit. That's a good movie. You should watch it. So the little dude in this movie that should get the credit is Jane Foster. Thor was born with his powers and raised to be worthy of Mjolnir, but after it was lost, it was because of Jane, that he got perspective and sacrificed himself and became worthy again and stronger for it, and became the hero and was able to defeat the bad. So for the past movies, the little dude in Iron Man 1 would be Yinzed, who saved Tony's life and gave him in that cave and gave him the motivation to live and become Iron Man. In Hulk, it would have to be Betty Ross, just because Bruce and the Hulk don't really have any sort of relationship with anyone else, so that would be the only person I could think of. Iron Man 2, it would have to be Tony's dad. He gave Tony all the tools, and just Tony saw that film strip at the right time to be able to cure himself and become the hero in that movie. So without Tony's dad giving, and I guess you could say Fury, I guess, since he gave him all of that information. I don't know. It's up to you. But I think the little dude in that one is Tony's dad, Howard Stark. Okay. And then on to the best and worst. So rather than go best, worst, I'll just do all the best together and then the worst together. So the best scene, I think, is when Thor is trying to retrieve his hammer and he's mowing down all the guys to get to it, and then he's unable to lift it, and just all the grief he's experiencing. It's great up until the point he cries out, and it's just ruined at that point, I think. Best line, I would say, is toward the start of it when they're on Jotunheim, Thor and Loki and Sif and the Warriors 3, and then they're about to leave, and the Frost Giant says, "Run back home, you little princess." And then the line I like is Loki's, "Damn. Just, we were almost out of here," and just nice. It was good timing, good temper, just good line, I thought. And then best joke, there were a lot of good jokes in this. I liked when Thor's talking to Agent Coulson, and he's like, "Know this, son of Cole," just because Thor, Odin's son of Odin. So to Thor, Coulson, he thinks he's the son of someone named Cole. And then Thor walks into a pet shop and he's like, "I need a horse." I don't know. It's a jump cut and it just works. Big fan of jump cuts, apparently. I've named a couple of them. And then Kat Dennings, if you need CPR, I know CPR. Like, again, just a great joke. And I liked a lot of her comedic timing and lines in this one. And then Coulson, even the straight man, even getting off a joke saying Thor made his men look like a bunch of mall cops. Yeah. And then the worst scene, I would have to say, is the fight between Thor and Loki and the dialogue between the two of them saying, "This is madness. Is it? Is it?" Didn't work for me. It was kind of, eh. And then the actual like fight sequence and choreography, not much for me. It was better seeing Thor's, I guess the fight kind of leads to the Thor breaking the Rainbow Bridge, but yeah. Worst line, I would have to give it to Odin. Cause Odin's about to banish Thor, and Loki says, "Father," and Odin just growls at him, like, "Arr!" It's funny, but it's just a bad line. It's weird. And then no joke really stuck out to me as being such a bad joke or something that I didn't like, so nothing for that. And then another new segment. What happened to the bad? Because sometimes you just forget what happened to the bad. Like, I know, like, reading, like, Harry Potter books, like, I forget what happens to Voldemort in the book. And thinking of it now, I can't even remember. Like, all those books, all that time reading, and you'd think you'd remember what happened to the bad, how it ended, but I don't for some reason. Like, it wasn't a big thing. So sometimes I forget what happens to the bad and want to point it out. So I'll do it for this one and then all the previous movies so far. So Loki, it seems like he fell into the remnants of the Bifrost path, and so he might have. It seems like he got transported, which was confirmed in the after credits scene. So it seems like he's on Earth, and he's somehow connected to Selvig now, which was the male scientist to Jane Foster. And then what happened to the bads in the other movies? In Iron Man 1, Obadiah Stane, it seemed like he was electrocuted, so I presume he's dead. Incredible Hulk, Abomination, he seems like he was detained, and based on that Marvel one-shot, the consultant, it seems like S.H.I.E.L.D. or General Ross is in possession of him, so likely just with S.H.I.E.L.D. Iron Man 2, Ivan Vanko, seems like he died in that pulsar blast between Rhodey and Stark. But yeah, I'd think he was dead after that for sure, and we didn't see anything after that to assume that he's alive. Yeah, so Loki and Abomination seem to be the only ones that survived so far, and then I guess you could call Justin Hammer a bad in Iron Man 2 as well, and he was sent to prison, it seems, so we haven't seen anything else on that, so I'm just going to assume he's in prison. Yeah. And then onto the loose threads. So from what post-credit scenes are still left open or regular movie cliffhangers or questions is what this segment's all about. So what's still left open from Thor? They destroyed the Bifrost, so how are they going to be able to, like, go to other worlds? How is Thor going to be able to meet up with Jane again? So that's something we'll see. What was the blue cube they were talking about at the after credit scene, and what is Loki doing there? Like, just question we have at this point. I mean, obviously, I already know I've seen all these movies, but I don't want to spoil anything. So I just want to be in that mindset of as if I'm only just watching these for the first time. Also, right before that, after credit scene at the end of the credits, it says Thor would return in the Avengers. Obviously a future movie, but again, we don't know what this is or means to be an Avenger and what that Avengers initiative is. That Avengers initiative is still like a loose thread from Iron Man 2 and Iron Man. So, speaking of that, the open threads from Iron Man 2. Justin Hammer's return. He said he'd be back. I don't know. Nothing in this one. And then the after credits scene at Iron Man 2 was the hammer in the crater. Got that paid off. We know what that is now. It's Mjolnir and belongs to Thor. And then Hulk, Mr. Blue's head expanding and his return. Didn't get anything in that, so that's still open, still a loose thread. And then Bruce's Hulk control. Nothing in here. Nothing in this movie to tie up that loose end. So, and then Iron Man, what's Shield? We got a better idea in this one, kind of the extent of it, but we still don't know exactly what their motivations are. So I'll still leave that as a loose thread. And then Avengers Initiative, still open. And then Stan Lee's cameo. I don't think there were really any other cameos in this one, but it was a pretty good one. He had a pretty good line. He was the truck driver trying to like tow out the hammer from the crater, and then the bed just flies off, and he's like, "Did it work?" One of his better cameos, I think. And then in terms of things I reference from this movie, I might say that's more like it. When just Thor says that when he's on Jotunheim, and he finally gets a bigger opponent, and he's like, "All right, now we can work. That's more like it." I also like sometimes say another when he slams down that mug, that coffee mug, and I really like that. "I need a horse" line just out of nowhere. All right. I didn't see any questions come through in any comments or on my email, so you can leave any questions you have or have any answers for me. Leave them in the comments section or email them to me at tvandmovieguideproductions@gmail.com. And well, that's all I had. Again, feel free to ask those questions. I'm on Instagram at tvandmovieguy, where I review TV shows and movies, shorter reviews, and on more than just the MCU. I'm only doing these types of reviews for the MCU right now, but still watching other stuff in between the MCU viewings. Just a reminder, I've never worked on any engagement or counted any votes or ballots for any award shows, and the opinions in these videos and reviews are my own and do not reflect that of my employers. So, my next review is going to be over Captain America, the First Avenger. So, be sure to watch that. Well, see ya.